and a pastor's home, attached to the church walls. Minutes before prayer service begins, a loud blast, and a woman falls to the ground. Her husband is holding the gun. He is crying. He says, "It was an accident." But if it was an accident, why had that same man promised to marry another woman months earlier? Why did he claim to be a Navy SEAL when he had never served? And the woman lying dead on the floor, was she truly his wife, or the final obstacle in his empire of lies? This is the story of Lorita Tillman, a woman who built her life on truth, and of Timothy Dene Tillman, a man who weaponized deception. Because sometimes the darkest shadows hide in plain sight. The case of Timothy Tillman. Janet Lorita Harper was born on September 2, 1965, in Alabama, into a middle-class family grounded in faith and service. Her childhood was painted in hues of simple, honest labor, helping her father in the garden, taking fresh vegetables to elderly neighbors, and learning that love was a verb. It manifested in actions, showing up, helping out, sharing kindness. Her mother often said, "Lorita, real faith isn't just in the prayers you say, but in the deeds you do." This principle became Janet's compass. She was the child who built nests for injured birds, befriended the new kid at school, and whispered her deepest secrets to her dog, Shadow. Her world was built on transparency and gentleness, where lies had no oxygen. Timothy Dene Tillman was born on August 26, 1962, in the United States, but his early years are shrouded in ambiguity. Records and accounts suggest a transient childhood, with family moves preventing deep roots or lasting friendships. Some sources indicate a father who valued stern discipline and achievement over affection. In this environment, young Timothy learned a fundamental lesson. Performance was necessary for acceptance. If reality didn't garner enough praise, imagination could enhance it. He began exaggerating his role in school projects or spinning tales of adventures he never had. This wasn't childish mischief, it was early training in systematic deceit. Once he saw how a well-crafted story could win attention and respect, it became central to his identity. His childhood's greatest secret wasn't what he did, but how effortlessly he could toggle between two selves. One, a charismatic showman for the outside world, the other, an empty vessel fueled by a relentless need to prove his worth. School life. In high school, Janet's reliability and service-oriented heart made her a favorite among teachers and peers. She wasn't just on the student council, she voluntarily tutored classmates who were struggling. A page in her diary read, "True happiness is what you feel when you put a spark in someone else's eyes." She spent time at a local nursing home and volunteered at the animal shelter. For her, morality was a personal code. Learned from her parents' example and her faith, she was the girl who would rather accept a B than cheat for an A, because her integrity was worth more than the grade. Her dream was to be a teacher or social worker, a path of service. She found profound, simple joy in walks with her dog, Shadow. This small detail spoke volumes. She was a woman who believed in selfless love, whether for people or pets. Timothy's school days, in contrast, were a continuous performance. He positioned himself as a social chameleon, someone who could blend into any group. He wasn't athletic, but became the team's motivator. He was academically average, but magnified his contributions to projects. Teachers were often impressed by his creativity, while peers were drawn to his confident smile and ability to always have a story. Upon closer inspection, cracks appeared. When a classmate questioned one of his boasts, Timothy reacted with anger and attempts to discredit them. He had learned to use deceit as a defensive weapon. This was the period where he honed his most potent arms: psychological manipulation and emotional gaslighting. School became less a place of learning and more a laboratory for social engineering. He learned to identify people's needs and vulnerabilities and leverage them to his advantage, a skill that would prove foundational for his future. Janet and Timothy met through a young Christian fellowship group. Timothy, now a young man, had refined his charm into a mantle of spiritual leadership. His prayers were complex and passionate. His biblical knowledge seemed deep. Janet, who had always sought a partner committed to serving others, was drawn in. She believed she'd found someone who shared her core values and faith. The early years were sweet. Timothy praised her kindness, shared her dream of a life of service, and seemed the ideal partner. After marriage, Janet fully embraced her roles as wife, mother, and pastor's wife. She led the band boosters at the Vincent Revival Center, a job demanding countless hours of invisible labor. Her entire world revolved around family and community. But slowly, Timothy's true nature began to surface. His absences grew more frequent. The excuse was always church work, distant conferences, spiritual retreats, or visiting a member in crisis. When Janet asked for details, he became defensive, turning to emotional manipulation. "Don't you trust my calling?" he'd ask, or "You're coming between me and God." It was a classic gaslighting strategy. Worried for her two daughters and their standing in the community, Janet suppressed her suspicions. She feared that speaking up would shatter both her family and the church. She had no idea these retreats were actually trips to cultivate a relationship with another woman, Molly Bizzari, in Washington State. During this period, Timothy took his double life to an audacious new level. He created a new identity as Tim McNally. Under this alias, he was a former Navy SEAL officer and war hero. He bought military gear, learned the jargon, and crafted elaborate tales of covert ops. He also fabricated a story of a prior divorce to make himself available. This wasn't a simple romance. It was an elaborate fraud that involved stolen valor, a crime considered a profound insult to the U.S. military. In August 2005, while Janet was very much alive, Timothy proposed to Molly at a restaurant in Mississippi. Molly and her family, impressed by his confidence and manufactured heroism, said yes. Timothy was now living two lives: the family man and respected pastor in Vincent, and the lone warrior and fiancé in Mississippi. The distance between them wasn't just geographical, it was a chasm of morality. October 2005 became a pressure cooker for Timothy. The walls were closing in from multiple sides. 1. Matrimonial deadline. His wedding date with Molly was approaching, but Janet remained his legal wife. 2. Professional ruin. A divorce would not only cost him his wife, but due to the conservative doctrines of the Assemblies of God Church, also his job, his home, his income, and his entire standing in the only community he knew. 3. The threat of exposure. The church had begun implementing new background check protocols for staff. Timothy feared this would expose his lies, his fake identity, and potentially his past criminal record. He faced an impossible puzzle. Every path led to the collapse of his fabricated empire. It appears he chose the one path he believed would free him from every problem at once. That October, the church organized turkey shoots to raise money for Hurricane Katrina victims. Timothy was the main organizer. After the event on October 22nd, a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun jammed. Since it couldn't be properly cleared, all the firearms were entrusted to Timothy for safekeeping. He placed them in his car trunk. On the evening of October 26th, 4 days before the final turkey shoot, the circumstances were oddly favorable. The church's weekly prayer service was about to begin, with people gathering. The family home, the parsonage, was attached to the church. A gunshot would be muffled during a busy time. If an accident occurred, help was immediately available. It was at this precise time that Timothy decided to retrieve the jammed shotgun from his car and bring it into the house. The crime, the horrific night of October 26th. The time was approximately 6:45 p.m. Timothy's later claim was that he was carrying multiple shotguns in his arms up a set of stairs. He said one weapon slipped, and as Janet reached out to help catch it, the gun discharged, striking her in the back. The blast pierced her lung and heart, causing immediate death. Timothy made a dead hysterical 911 call. He immediately admitted he was holding the weapon and that it was a terrible accident. The initial response was sympathetic. Church members mourned with their pastor. The Vincent police initially viewed it as a tragic firearms accident. But Janet's father, Charles Harper, was skeptical. He knew his daughter was wary of guns and avoided them. He pressed for state investigators to get involved. The case was handed to an experienced agent with the Alabama Bureau of Investigation, Lieutenant Scott Bartle. Investigation: The Truth Behind the Curtain. Lieutenant Bartle was a skilled professional adept at detecting lies. Timothy's initial interviews raised red flags. His story seemed cut too smooth, too rehearsed. When Bartle pressed for details, Timothy grew agitated and contradictory. "When I read his interview, I knew he was lying," Bartle later stated. The investigation uncovered shocking revelations. 1. Cell phone records. They revealed frequent and lengthy contact with a woman in Washington state. Speaking to this woman, Molly Bizzari unveiled the entire fabricated military persona. The revelation was staggering. The pastor who preached truth and honesty was living an elaborate lie based on stolen valor. 2. Financial fraud. In January 2006, 3 months after Janet's death, a $5,000 check was deposited into the Tillmans' joint account. It was an unsolicited loan offer in Janet Tillman's name, endorsed with what appeared to be her forged signature. When confronted, Timothy admitted to forging his dead wife's signature, claiming he needed money for expenses. This act, combined with his double life, completed the portrait of a man for whom deception was a default setting. 3. Weapons expertise. Investigators found that the lethal shotgun required significant trigger pull pressure, about 5 to 6 pounds. It was not a weapon that fired easily or accidentally. However, there was no direct evidence of murder, no confession, no eyewitness. Timothy's accident narrative was physically possible. Authorities needed a strategy. In 2007, they arrested Timothy in Florida on the felony warrant for check forgery. They knew this was their one chance to get him back to Alabama for questioning. During this arrest, they also served him with the murder indictment. The trial. Lies vs. Justice. The First Act, 2009. The first trial in 2009 divided the community. Some still held faith in their pastor, others were shaken by the mounting evidence. The prosecution's case. Prosecutor Roger Hepburn. They built the case on motive and character. They presented Timothy's double life, his engagement to Molly, and the forged check as proof of his capacity for sustained and intricate deception. They argued Janet was the sole obstacle to his new life, and her removal solved all his problems. Hepburn asked the jury, "When a person builds their entire life on lies, how do you separate out one lie from another?" At the defense's case, attorney Erskine Mattis, they clung to the accident theory. They admitted Timothy was a liar and a fraud, but argued that didn't make him a murderer. They brought in weapons experts who testified a jammed weapon could discharge unintentionally. They insisted the prosecution lacked direct proof. Emotional testimony. Janet's father, Charles Harper, told the court, "I don't think Tim should ever be allowed to walk the streets as a free man again." Janet's daughters also spoke of their devastating loss. After about 8 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict. They found Timothy guilty of murder and forgery. He was sentenced to the life in prison plus 10 years. Appeal and the second trial, 2011 to 2012. Timothy's team appealed immediately. In 2011, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals delivered a surprise ruling. The court decided it was wrong to try the murder and forgery charges together. They believed the forgery evidence from 3 months after the death could have unfairly prejudiced the jury on the murder charge. It was a technical victory, not an exoneration. A new trial was ordered. In 2012, before a new jury, all the evidence was presented again. But this time the forgery charge was separate. The result was the same. A second jury found Timothy guilty of murder. He was again sentenced to life in prison. It was the same decision reached by 2 different juries under 2 different circumstances, underscoring the strength of the case against him. Timothy Dene Tillman, who now goes by Timothy Patrick McNally, is incarcerated at the Limestone Correctional Facility in Alabama. He will be eligible for his first parole hearing around 2027 now. However, given 2 murder convictions and his history of deception, his release is considered highly unlikely. The legacy of Janet Lorita Tillman extends far beyond her death. She is remembered by loved ones as a devoted mother, a dedicated community servant, and a woman who loved her dog. Her story is a bitter warning. Sometimes the deepest betrayal happens where we feel most secure. This case is about justice, faith, and the complex webs of lies a person can spin. The tenacity with which Janet's family sought justice for her shows that the relentless light of truth can pierce even the brightest facade of darkness. This is not just a crime report. It is the memory of a woman who lived for others, and the story of a man who lived a lie. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you can be the first to hear about such real-life stories.